Hello there ladies and gentlemen, TX141 here, also known as Paul, welcoming you to my brand new War Thunder series, which I like to call Subscriber Spotlight. This is part of my 800 subscriber celebration, as we are about to pass that number if we have not already done so prior to this video being uploaded, and has stemmed out of the inaugural Arcade Ace in a Day competition. Following the competition, I had a number of players submit replays asking me to review the replay and provide feedback. Not only does this provide an asset for you as a player if you submitted a replay to learn a little bit from my perspective and also see where you can improve your game even further, but it also enables me to see where I am going wrong in some cases with given aircraft and perfect my technique even further, as none of us are perfect no matter how hard we strive. Our first gameplay for this series is provided by Stakaman of the DMH clan. Stakaman is going to be flying in his BF-109 F-1 on the ground strike map Merchant Fleet. For those who are unaware of the capabilities of the F-1 Messerschmitt 109, this is a plane which is judged by some to be a little bit underwhelming, due to its battle rating of 3.0 and its armament of only two 7.92mm machine guns based above the engine and a single 20mm MG-FFM cannon firing through the propeller hub with only 60 rounds for the cannon. This plane is deadly at close range thanks to the limited muzzle velocity of the 20mm cannon, and can surprise some with its outstanding manoeuvrability with increasing speed, especially within a speed range of 350 to 450 km an hour and up at higher altitudes, especially beyond 4,000 meters. For a full review of this plane, please click the annotation in the top right hand corner of your screen as displayed now. Yet, let us not digress any further and get into Stakaman's game. So let us get started. Stakaman, straight from the outset, is going to use the brilliant climb rate of the F1 to go from roughly 2,000 meters altitude to approximately 4,750 meters altitude in a very quick space of time, following a couple of level outs in order to reconsolidate his speed. In the meantime, I am going to approximate Stakaman's setup due to the limitations that a replay file has, as follows. For the 7.92mm machine guns, he is using the stealth belts, and we can see that by the lack of machine gun tracer during the course of this game. Secondly, for the 20mm MG-FFM cannon, thanks to the appearance of tracer and the overall effectiveness of the 20mm shells in this game, as we are going to see, I am going to assume that the air target belt is being used. For gun convergence, due to the centralised mounting of the armament, I am going to assume a 500 meter gun convergence, and a fuel load of roughly 20 minutes or 30 minutes depending on Stakaman's personal preference. Of course, Stakaman, if you are watching this video, feel free to correct me in the comments section below and interject where necessary if I make any bad calls thanks to the lack of functionality of the replay file. Having already obtained 4,200 meters altitude, and we proceed further here rather than talk about the setup anymore, Stakaman uses great awareness straight away to pick off the fact that he's got a number of enemy bombers in the distance, as we can see by those limited black lines, roughly at say 8 kilometers away, one being a B-25 Mitchell and the other being a Wellington. Yet Stakaman's attention is focused on this P-38G Lightning. He goes into a shallow climb in order to ensure that if the P-38 comes up towards him, he's got the ability to essentially overclimb and hammerhead down on the P-38 when it stalls out. Yet the Lightning player here seems to be more occupied with something well off in the distance and tunnel visions completely. As a result, Stakaman hesitates no further and goes down in for the kill, dropping down to roughly 3,100 meters altitude in his pursuit of what is quite a fast foe in a limited dive. At roughly 300 meters, Stakaman's going to open fire and cut the Lightning to shreds, making for a very easy yet absolutely devastating first kill, and breaking up here into a spiral both for celebratory tactics and also perhaps because the spiral affords him a little bit of elusiveness if any potential pursuers were to come out of the cloud and try to chase Stakaman up into the higher altitudes whilst opening fire with their guns. That is something I do not regularly do, and I perhaps should employ or try out in future arcade games. Nonetheless, we can see Stakaman's attentions have been drawn towards an enemy B-25 Mitchell, who is quite a smart pilot, diving from roughly 4,500 meters altitude down to 4,000 meters altitude to build up his speed before leveling out, and this means that Stakaman cannot perform a linearized boom and zoom pass, instead having to cut in behind the Mitchell's 12.7mm machine guns. As we can see here, Stakaman has run out of 20mm cannon ammunition and breaks back in nonetheless for a second pass. Now fortunately here, the first burst off his 20mm cannon killed the rear gunner of the Mitchell, and so this reduces my ability to criticise this second pass to some extent, although it was still risky, especially with the top gunner still alive. and so this could have gone very differently if the gunners on the B-25 Mitchell had had higher fatality, or indeed had been a little bit more accurate. Nonetheless, the kill was clean, taking off the tail completely from the B-25, and it is only a matter of time before the fuselage meanders into the ground and allows Stakaman to achieve his second kill. Although we have to be aware of the fact that the longer you spend behind the rear gunners, the more likely you are to receive damage, whether you execute the target perfectly or not, just because the laws of probability. Stakaman here picks up on the fact an enemy PBY, originally flying at higher altitudes, has decided to dive, and so this means that all the targets up at higher altitudes, apart from those being chased by a friendly MiG-3 on his team, an enemy Wellington that is, as we're going to see in a very short period of time, have all decided to dive down towards lower altitudes and therefore surrender the higher altitudes to Stakaman's team, thanks to his efforts and those of the friendlies chasing down that Wellington in the distance. And so now Stakaman is going to make full use of his own awareness and the ability to abuse the scouting privileges of his friendly teammates down at lower altitudes in order to try and discern and pick on a new target, via a boom and zoom fashion, having just had the second kill, i.e. the B-25 Mitchell kill, accredited to his score. Looking around continually, and also probably going for a reload at this point, he cannot see anything worthwhile at the moment, although as he comes around and turns, he's definitely picked up on a new target, and it is going to be a Beaufighter Mark 6C, which he's just spotted and is about to dive down on. We're going to see once again here the lethality of using the F-1 in a boom and zoom role, and also the fact that Stakaman is quite an accurate pilot. With increasing speed, of course, his roll rate is compromised to some extent, yet we can now see the Beaufighter Mark 6C flying along rather casually, and Stakaman is going to take full advantage of this, opening fire at 300 metres. Doing significant damage to the Beaufighter Mark 6C, although here breaking out underneath the Beaufighter, which has not taken any damage to its elevators according to the battle chat, and as a result this is a bit of a problem and a criticism that I have to level here. On a number of occasions I have similar passes occur in my F1 or indeed in my F4, and when I have broken up and tried to fly away from the Beaufighter, their performance, especially with the simplified flight models in arcade, has allowed them to put their guns onto me extended distance, say 700 metres distance and increasing, and fire off a successful salvo of 20mm cannon rounds. Now of course, that is a rather judgmental way of looking at things, and that is based on the overall accuracy and luck and ability for the Beaufighter pilots to quickly change direction and bring themselves onto target. Yet Stakaman got away with it here quite sublimely and goes in for the kill as the Beaufighter Mark 6C loops over, adding a third kill to his tally, and now putting himself into a very dangerous situation, and this is the reason why I picked this gameplay. Stakaman now has a lag-free 35 on his tail that has come directly out of spawn at high speed. He is trying to pinpoint down the location of lag-free 35, which has just got in behind him via a loop. And we can see here that he's using the powerful rudder and engine power of his Messerschmitt 19 F1 to force the lag-free 35 to try and chase him with increasing altitude. And this would work, but there is a P-39N0 Aerocobra coming out of the spawn point as well, and so Stakaman has had to resort to a continuous roll, and therefore creating a horizontal loop. And what this means is the lag-free 35 can gain ground thanks to its very high roll rate and the fact that while it has limited engine power by comparison to the F1, it has enough in order to rebuild its speed in the horizontal. So this has meant this has turned into a 2-on-1 engagement with the lag-free 35 getting in behind Stakaman once again. And here it would appear that the lag-free 35 just cannot get the shot onto target, despite the replay depicting the lag-free 35 having a clear shot. An alternative theory may be the lag-free 35 is trying to reload here, hitting him this time in the tail section with its 12.7mm machine gun at least. Stakaman opens fire on the Aerocobra, having caught him in a very dead high profile turn, and another turn commences with Stakaman putting even more 20mm cannon shells and machine gun fire in, and a third burst finishing off the Aerocobra to a great extent. And now, having provided himself with enough time, Stakaman can return to using the engine power and the rudder power of the F1 to force the lag-free 35 to eventually have to go into a horizontal turn and lose all of its energy. And this is what he was originally trying to do, if I remember correctly, trying to break ground and essentially force the lag-free 35 to continue into a very slow, dead-level horizontal turn. And we can see now that Stakaman, despite picking up an M1 on his tail as well, has achieved a critical hit on the lag-free 35 thanks to this, meaning that this new 2-on-1 engagement is going to be a lot easier, the lag-free 35 crippled to a great extent, and the M1 now breaking out into a horizontal turn at full profile, allowing Stakaman to achieve his fourth kill with relative ease, ripping off the left wing. At this point he breaks around to go for another pass on the lag-free 35, but the lag free is breaking back towards the friendly airfield for repairs, and this means that Stakaman can only break off because there are more fighters coming out of the enemy spawn point, and it would be reckless and foolish to try and pursue down the foe who is about to land on the airfield thanks to the top AA cover. The P-39N Aerocobra has now gone into the water for Stakaman's 5th kill and therefore his ace in the day. Yet as we can see, his engine has taken some hits thanks to the steam emanating out of the engine, and so this means that Stakaman is now at a bit of a disadvantage and may have handicapped engine performance. We have an enemy fighter trying to break on to Stakaman here. It's a Messerschmitt 110C4, and Stakaman uses his greater manoeuvrability by comparison with a heavy fighter in order to force the heavy fighter to miss its head-on shots and break up into a very sharp vertical climb, something that works against the 110's overall assets. Indeed, here Stakaman uses the vertical capabilities of his F-1 by comparison with the 110 to get behind it and achieve a devastating blow, taking off its right wing and achieving his 6th kill. We can see here that even when Stakaman's wounded and trying to make it back to base, he's still got enough fight in him to take down what is an absolutely deadly foe in the horizontal, and one that has limited abilities in the vertical by comparison with a Messerschmitt 109 F1. He now breaks down towards the sea level, coming at roughly 20 metres above the sea level in order to try and build up as much speed as possible, as he has at least 2 planes chasing him down, most prominently a P-63A5 King Cobra, and so I apologise here for the frame rate issues when we get closer and closer to the water. I'm using a brand new 1TB hard drive at the moment, and it seems a little bit resilient to working when I've got high graphic response on my PC. Nonetheless, we continue. Stakaman here realises that he is not going to be able to get away from the P-63A5. Instead, he is going to have to extenuate this chase for as long as possible, taking a very linear path until he gets back towards friendly territory. I've had this a number of times in fighters myself. You cannot get away from your foe, so you're going to have to draw them as far away from friendly territory as possible, whilst bringing them back to your own friendlies or indeed back to your own airfield. Stakaman here is not going to be able to get back to the airfield in time, but what he can do is isolate the P-63A5 King Cobra, where its other friendly that was trying to pursue down Stakaman in collaboration, actually breaking off and attacking a friendly fighter instead. We can see here that Stakaman cannot make it away, and that the King Cobra is now at roughly a kilometre, with that profile getting ever larger and the King Cobra biding its time thanks to the limited accuracy of the 37mm cannon with extended distance. And I am going to assume that King Cobra pilot is no sharpshooter by comparison with some of the fighter pilots I've seen in game. So instead, the King Cobra closes even more, and Stakaman is going to have to make a choice. Which way is he going to break? And here Stakaman is going to take the riskiest, but perhaps the best opportunity he has to break up very sharply and cut round on the rudder. The limited accuracy of the P-63A5 King Cobra pilot means that he misses all of his 37mm shots and indeed the brunt of his 12.7mm machine gun fire as well. And whilst the King Cobra is on Stakaman's tail, he is now going to use the tactic which caused the lag-free 35 to get onto his tail even further to force the King Cobra to overshoot. A very tight horizontal barrel roll. And this means that Stakaman can now gain the initiative against an opponent with a more limited roll rate and engine performance, which means that the King Cobra is going to overshoot very easily, especially seeing as the King Cobra pilot has not cut their engine at any point. And this means now the initiative is in Stakaman's hands, and he can start to pepper the King Cobra with fire. It's going to take a few bursts here, seeing as the King Cobra pilot is putting up a decent fight and trying to dodge out the way of the incoming fire, and is also flying quite a durable aircraft. And I think also that Stakaman has had enough of trying to get shots on the target accurately and is now spraying a little bit more indiscriminately. Nonetheless, that's not a criticism. He's already done well beyond what the Call of Duty would require for an F1 pilot. The King Cobra here is breaking around into a sharp turn and then going up into the vertical, making a very high scale turn here, and the 7.92mm machine guns of Stakaman's F1 just cannot do enough damage to get the kill, and so it's going to take one more burst, having reloaded the 20mm cannon. King Cobra here continues to try and play against Stakaman's engine power, but that's not going to work against a Messerschmitt 109 F1, as we now see. And finally the right wing comes off the King Cobra for Stakaman's 7th kill. And so, with a bit of a reprieve achieved, Stakaman is now going to go and land, especially since his engine's very heavily damaged, and I get the feeling it is on its way out. Yet his awareness never drops, and I've got a feeling that he's looking at the radar at this point and wondering to himself whether there's a red dog coming up behind him. And he can see to his right and looking behind there is another enemy fighter trying to make its way over to him. If we all recall that lag-free 35 from earlier that has finally repaired itself, that lag-free 35 pilot has unfinished business, as we can see here. Coming in quite quickly, Yet as Stakaman breaks his way over the airfield, a friendly Messerschmitt 110 sacrifices its life, rather non-voluntarily I should say as well, with the Lag-free 35 taking its attention towards what is a KI-45, my apologies, and taking the KI-45 out but being shot down by the AAA. This means that Stakaman has now bought himself enough time to land, thanks to the sacrifice of his teammate and the brilliant accuracy of the AA gunners around the airfield. Nonetheless, things are not going to go quite as smoothly as we're about to see. Stakaman deploys the landing gear and brings himself down very nicely, but a PBJ has been highlighted at roughly 8.3 kilometers. Now the PBJ is not flying directly towards the airfield at the moment, but it is coming quite quickly in the direction and vicinity of Stakaman. And personally, if I was in Stakaman's shoes right now, I'd be a little bit concerned, as the PBJ seems to be coming towards me at a gradual rate at the moment. And having landed now and the engine most likely going to black, although we do not have a damage indicator here, the PBJ is still heading in this general direction, and is now coming incredibly quickly by comparison with how it was about 10 seconds ago. Now at 4.5 kilometers and closing just as quickly as it ever was, and even faster. That ground crew better be doing something. We need to get back up in the skies, otherwise we're going to be Swiss cheese. Indeed, we've lost the distance indicator here thanks to the repair reset on screen, and so I'm going to assume that the PBJ at this point is 2 kilometers away and getting ever closer, so Stakaman is going to have to gun that engine and put the wet down full in order to dodge the incoming fire, as the PBJ has actually shot down a friendly A6M2 on its way in. Stakaman makes it up in time and dodges the incoming fire, and the PBJ, having dropped its bombs onto the airfield and shot at anything on the airfield, is about to be shot down as Stakaman breaks up into the sky. Yet here, a LA-5 has gotten to Stakaman's tail. It's the same pilot as the pilot from that Lag-free 35, and in a relentless barrage, the unfortunate occurs. Stakaman's right wing comes off, and the LA-5 pilot finally gets revenge. And unfortunately this means that Stakaman is going to finish this game on 7 for 1. Nonetheless, I personally feel this was an absolutely brilliant replay, and we shall now, after the post-game stat screens, take a quick look at what Stakaman did right, and where he could improve even further. Ergo, what did Stakaman do well? Straight from the outset, Stakaman showed a great understanding of the flight characteristics of the F-1. Its great climb rate, high altitude performance and high speed performance allowing him to chase down the P-38G Lightning and the B-25 Mitchell with aplomb. Following on from this and proceeding towards lower altitudes, Stakaman showed great understanding of the ability to conquer the Lag-free 35 in the initial 1 versus 1 dogfight by applying a level out on the rudder and then using the full engine power of the F1 and rudder capabilities of the F1 by comparison to the Lag-free 35 to begin to initiate the hammerhead stall. However, this was not going to be achieved, and the Lag-free 35 was not in a position whereby it was going to be vulnerable to be shot down, due to the arrival of a P-39N Aerocobra coming directly out of spawn. We did not see this on the replay, yet I have a feeling that Stakaman was well aware of the Aerocobra's presence thanks to the radar that would have been on his HUD, and as a result he had to bail out of his initial adventure and force himself into a horizontal barrel roll which allowed the Lag-free 35 to get back onto his tail. Yet he went by the logic that he would be dogged in his resilience and therefore chased down the P-39 Aerocobra over the course of 3 bursts to get a kill, and then re-engaged the Lag-free 35 which was on his tail but just could not get the shot onto target. At which point, Stakaman returned to the standard tactic of using the engine power and the rudder of the F1 to force the Lag-free 35 to stall out into a very cumbersome horizontal turn and be dispatched via critical damage, forcing the Lag-free 35 to fly back towards the airfield and unfortunately come out of Stakaman's hands. At the same time, Stakaman essentially managed to force a Messerschmitt 19 ML1 who tried to reignite the 2 versus 1 engagement alongside his Lag-free 35 compatriot by breaking onto the back of Stakaman after a very sharp level out following what was to be a very tight Immelmann. However, the ML1 ended up in a similar situation to the Lag-free 35, breaking out into a very rough and slow horizontal turn, allowing Stakaman to pick up another kill. And so this was very good execution and awareness from Stakaman's part, bringing down 2 versus 1 engagements in his favour, despite not being able to get the kill on the Lag-free 35 in the end. At this point, Stakaman did not hesitate to break away, despite the engine damage to his plane and the fact that a P-63A5 King Cobra was continually catching up with him. However, in the end he managed to dispatch the King Cobra by taking the greatest risk and playing against the King Cobra pilot's weaknesses, which was clearly the pilot's accuracy with a 37mm cannon. If it had been an A10, the situation may have been much different thanks to the high fire rate of the 37mm M10, yet fortunately for us we had the Aero Cobra with the 37mm M4 here, and so Stakaman was able to brake very tightly on the rudder and force, thanks to a horizontal barrel roll which he had to use against the lag-free 35, the King Cobra to overshoot and end up in front of Stakaman's guns. And after 6 bursts of rather indiscriminate fire, Stakaman brought down the King Cobra for his 7th and final kill of the game. All thanks to great awareness and trying to extenuate the dogfight back into friendly territory to the point whereby if the friendly fighters were not going to help Stakaman out, the King Cobra was on its own and so was Stakaman, leading to an absolutely horrendous 1 versus 1, as per every dogfighter would seem during the course of this game, apart from when it ended up into a 2 versus 1 situation. At this point Stakaman once again employed great spatial awareness to be aware of the fact that the lag-free 35 from earlier came back towards him and tried to shoot him down over his own airfield. However, due to his significant acceleration he was able to make it back to the safety of the AA guns around the airfield and also use the friendly KI-45 Hey Toru in order to act as a distraction for the lag-free 35 to focus on. Of course this meant the lag-free 35 got a free kill in the form of the KI-45 but was shot down by the AAA in order to guarantee that Stakaman could land and repair. Nonetheless, we now come on to the negatives, of which there are a couple. Starting with the B-25 Mitchell pass, Stakaman started off perfectly, with his initial burst, i.e. the remnant 20mm cannon ammunition going into the tail section of the Mitchell and allow him to kill off the rear tail gunner. This meant that Stakaman had afforded himself a nice position below the central plane of the B-25 Mitchell and at its rear to reload his 20mm cannon and then go in for another burst. Instead he opted to re-engage with just the 7.92mm machine guns and as a result push himself above the central plane of the B-25 Mitchell, allowing the top gunner with its dual 12.7mm configuration to open fire on Stakaman, and if the odds had been against him, perhaps even have ignited his fuel tank. And so this was a very risky approach in my opinion, especially due to the fast reload he clearly has on the F-1's 20mm cannon and the fact he could have just afforded himself a little bit more safety and erred on the side of caution instead. My second and final area of criticism for this gameplay stems from the conclusive engagement with the LA-5. Whilst Stakaman had just taken off from the airfield and therefore had little altitude and a rather low energy state to hand, he still noticed the LA-5 well before it was within firing distance and at the point whereby Stakaman had his tail towards the LA-5. This as a result meant that the two planes were travelling in the same direction, and if Stakaman had put his nose down towards the ground once again, mimicking the tactic from the combat with the P-63A5 King Cobra, he would have been able to extend the overall distance required for the LA-5 to get into firing range, and this may have kept Stakaman alive right at the end of the game, rather than seeing his right wing come off with the final burst from the LA-5's cannons. Of course, Stakaman's intention with that sharp turn on both the rudder and the elevator was to force the LA-5 to have to fire off a very short and limited burst. Yet, Stakaman did go for this turn a little bit early, and I would say that the LA-5 pilot, having watched the gameplay back from the LA-5 pilot's perspective, actually cut his throttle slightly on the entry, seeing as the LA-5 actually came in a lot slower than I would have expected for a pilot trying to get a revenge kill, and as a result this set him up for a perfect shot on Stakaman's aircraft. Regardless of these two criticisms however, I must applaud you Stakaman on submitting this replay. My commendation does not come in the form of you showing us the incredible capabilities of the F-1 with increasing altitude, speed and therefore overall manoeuvrability, nor in you demonstrating very well the overall handling characteristics of this plane at moderate speeds and in the hands of a capable War Thunder arcade pilot. But I selected this replay because of your attitude, and it is one which is very hard to find in War Thunder. I must say right now you never flinched once, and you made every opponent that came your way flinch instead, whether it be the B-25 Mitchell, or indeed the lag-free 35 that seemed hell-bent on beating you in the end. It is this kind of attitude which makes a brilliant player in War Thunder. At times we do have to flinch first, in order to survive and fight another day. Yet here Stakaman never flinched because he knew he was going to come out on top, or at least take everyone down with him in what would be a ferocious fight. And bar the LA-5 getting the killing blow in the end, this was the perfect replay to start off what I hope to be a brilliant War Thunder series on my channel. At the same time, if you feel I've been too critical of Stakaman's overall performance or not harsh enough, why not leave a comment in the comments section below. If you are interested in submitting a replay for the Subscriber Spotlight series, please read the description below for more details on how you may do so. And finally, as always, if you enjoyed the video, why not leave a like, comment or subscribe for future War Thunder videos on my channel. Yet until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for 800 subscribers, take care, and good luck in the skies.